Hey listeners, last year was our 15th year of the best in food storytelling. As we head into 2025, we're kicking off a contest in collaboration with the podcast series Feast and Harmony and Sixth Man, where you have the opportunity to win a 4-night cruise for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, a food, wine, and spirits festival at sea. When you donate to HRN, you'll be entered for the chance to win a porthole cabin for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, sailing May 5th through 9th, 2025, from Miami to Cozumel, Mexico on Norwegian Gem. You'll also support another year of great food storytelling with a portion of your donation going toward disaster relief for the food and beverage communities within Western North Carolina and Southern California. This cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for culinary adventurers, featuring top celebrity chefs including Jonathan Waxman, Antonio LaFaso, Robert Irvine, and many, many more. There's a myriad of experiences such as restaurant takeovers, live food and mixology demos, themed parties, and more. To enter your chance to win, please visit heritageradionetwork.org/cruise. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or over to enter. That's heritageradionetwork.org/cruise.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Meal prep is like the only way to share food with yourself in a way that's meaningful. I know that on Saturday, when I have the energy and when I have the joy and when I have the inspiration, it's like a gift for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday Griff, who is tired, who has looked at the news, who has forgotten to text their friends. And in those moments, I'm like, oh man, look, like past Griff got together these veggies and these spices and brought it all together so that I could have this moment to like enjoy it myself now. But like, food is love, and aren't we supposed to love ourselves?
That's my partner Griffin talking about our meal prep routine. We've been making a big pot of super stew on Saturday that we eat every day till it's gone for most of the 6 years we've lived together. We've happily eaten the same salad every day with minor variations through all that time too. Greens, carrots, cucumbers, scallions, avocado, nutritional yeast, and my sesame dressing. Knowing what I'm gonna eat makes my life so much easier. But I know the idea of eating the same food on Wednesday that you ate Monday and Tuesday is torture for some people, meaning prepped meals feel like a burden rather than a blessing. As we begin the new year, we're making our way through the highs and lows of meal prepping, from the invisible labor that comes with cooking for a family of 5 to the logistics of feeding yourself when you have ADHD. I'm H. Conley, and this is Meat and 3 on HRN.
Meat and 3.
Meat and 3.
Meat and 3.
1 meat, 3 sides.
Food, news, and storytelling.
A square meal. For your ears.
Meat and 3.
Have you ever forgotten to take the meat from the freezer, even though your mom called and asked you to? Whether that makes you cringe with leftover guilt or not, that small favor took a minute of your time but saved her an hour after a long day of work. Taylor Graham only really started thinking about the difference this made to her mom last summer. For our first story, she and her younger sister discuss the invisible labor that parents, often moms, take on in the kitchen, plus what they take on as the eldest daughters.
I think of myself as a competent and capable person. But after my first day at a 9-to-5 job, I realized I simply could not make myself a filling, nutritious meal. I was tired, and the last thing I wanted to do was chop vegetables. Enter meal prep. My mom has always prepared her meals in bulk for the work week ahead, but she also cooked dinner each night for me and my siblings. Sometimes she even made 2 versions of the same meal to make sure we all liked it. As I made my first attempt at meal prepping, I realized all the invisible labor my mom does that I've taken for granted. The unpaid labor women take on is overlooked. In fact, women's unpaid housework and caretaking was worth $1.5 trillion last year. So, I've started to take on some of that load as the eldest daughter, and so has my sister, Ashlyn. She's the Graham sibling most likely to get in the kitchen to help our parents. Here's Ashlyn.
I'd say cooking has always been something that I had a natural interest in. Even when we were younger and we would do baking competitions during Thanksgiving with just the children, I kind of found that I just naturally loved baking and cooking. So I kind of also found out that that was something I could help my parents out with around the house if I just stepped into that role as well.
But cooking dinner for 5 every night isn't easy, especially when you have other responsibilities, like being a full-time student.
With how busy my senior year was, I think that really did spark a realization of how appreciative I was of my parents, seeing them be able to provide for us and cook for us, all of these things, because now I was very busy during my senior year, and I was also trying to cook for my brother, continue what I was already doing. I wanted to continue cooking for my family, but I realized juggling all of these tasks at the same time was very hard to do.
Overall, as my sister and I have lightened a bit of our parents' load, the labor that goes into ensuring 3 kids have food on the table every day has become more visible to us. Now, instead of texting our parents' grocery list, we are the ones helping make the grocery trips.
It made me really reflective on how my parents were already doing that. They were already, having careers and providing for their kids and having to cook simultaneously.
Being in college, away from home, has made the invisible labor my parents do much clearer to me. The little steps like pre-chopping my veggies or pre-seasoning my chicken make such a world of a difference when I get home hungry and just want food quickly. So, next time your mom asks you to take the meat out the freezer, try not to do it when you hear her car pull up in the driveway.
2025 marks the year of the snake in the lunar calendar. For Hugh Nguyen, it's the most important holiday in her Vietnamese culture. It's a time of celebration with family and friends, and of course, lots of food. But for Hugh's family, the prep work begins long before the festivities. Because where they live, a trip to the grocery store isn't as easy as a drive around the block.
I'm here at City Farmers Market, a multicultural grocery store found along Buford Highway in Atlanta, Georgia. Inside, you'll find products specifically catering to the diverse communities that make this area home. It's only November, but my mom and I are busy preparing for Duck, or Vietnamese Lunar New Year, happening in January. Already, the grocery store has the familiar red envelopes, gold-plated decorations, and snacks ready to usher in the Year of the Snake, a zodiac sign symbolizing both change and caution. At the butcher counter, my mother gives me advice on selecting the best piece of pork belly. It is the star of our Lunar New Year feast. This isn't an ordinary grocery run. We've driven over 4 hours to get here. As we prepare for the long trek back home, I know it will be several more months before we can enjoy the fruits of our labor. Keisha Truitt, one of my closest friends, has had similar experiences growing up in our hometown.
Everything as far as like produce and brands, they were very limited. You only had like 2 or 3 grocery stores in the whole city. I mean, that was it. And of course, being in a small, southern, rural Georgia town, all that was available was like southern cuisine. While fried chicken is great, it doesn't beat a spring roll.
Raised in a biracial family, her Cambodian father would drive for hours to find the ingredients that reminded him of home. It's because we grew up in a cultural food desert. While many may be familiar with food deserts in general, these areas affect communities where ingredients indigenous to their heritage are hard to find. Keisha recently took her dad to a market in Charlotte.
He got so excited when he was finding things that he could not find anywhere else.
And she goes on to tell me how her dad acted like a kid in a candy store. My mom gets the same way as well. Those moments are what made me realize the importance of accessibility. It is now January and Lunar New Year celebrations are in full swing. All morning long, my mother has been cooking the pork belly that we bought months ago. It is now ready. Just listen to that perfectly crisp skin. Though cultural food deserts have made it difficult for many immigrants to recreate a taste of home, Our parents' perseverance is a testament to how they have always found a way to carry on their traditions, no matter the distance.
We'll be right back with more Meat and Three after a brief break.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. Wisconsin, the state of cheese, makes half of the nation's specialty cheese and wins more awards than any other state or country. Our heritage and traditions, master cheesemaker program, and the American propensity for innovation all put Wisconsin on the cutting edge of cheesemaking. With over 600 varieties of cheese to choose from and 5,500 national and international awards and counting, get ready to turn your refrigerator into a trophy case. Enjoying a Wisconsin cheese is basically like winning a gold medal in culinary achievement. Set your mind at cheese. When you bite into a wedge of Wisconsin Wonderful, you know it is made with the ultimate skill and passion possible. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Welcome back to Meat and Three. So far, our conversations about meal prep have centered around planning for physical limitations. But juggling time and tasks in our day and getting food on the table can be more challenging for some folks. Next up, Jessie Nicely sits down with fellow reporter and registered dietitian Sariel Grullon to have an open conversation about mental health, nutrition, and caring for our bodies as neurospicy individuals. And before we get into it, if any of this resonates with you, please talk to a doctor or dietitian about solutions specific to your situation.
Let's talk meal prep. I wasn't diagnosed with ADD until I was 30, and I feel like that was very illuminating for me in terms of like, obviously a lot of things going on up here, but also my relationship with food. Is this something that you have like experienced or kind of worked with people before that have ADD?
Yeah, definitely. When I'm meeting with folks that have any type of neurodivergence or have ADHD, it comes up a lot. Problems with meal frequency, forgetting meals, or eating certain kinds of meals like hyperfixation.
When I take Adderall, I find that there's long stretches where I'm not thinking about food or water or anything, and then it wears off and it's like, oh my God, I haven't eaten or drank water in 7 hours and I'm like on the brink of death. And then going into the kitchen, if there aren't things that are basically ready to eat meals, I'm overwhelmed. What is your advice for that?
There's so many different things that we can try to do for that scenario depending on the person and what things do and do not work for them. One is making sure that we have a comfortability with shortcuts and using those shortcuts to our advantage. Making sure that you have a I need to eat right now drawer, and that can either be on your desk, in your kitchen, wherever there's going to be as little barriers as possible so that when that time does strike, you don't have to make so many decisions because all of that is already done. When you're starving, overwhelmed, overstimulated, and then you have to think of all those little tiny steps, it can feel very overwhelming. So in sessions, like actually taking time to visualize every little thing and how we can make it smaller, so that when the time strikes, all you have to do is like put this in the microwave and I'm done.
That's so smart to look at the schedule. It feels so basic, but that's so smart. I think also there is a part of it where it's like just knowing that I have to eat every day can also be so overwhelming. Like it's just, it never ends, you know, because we have to eat to live, but it's just this thing that I always have to do.
That feeling of having to make decisions for meals can be daunting. So it's helpful to do some gentle meal planning where you're at least thinking ahead of your week. Where do I actually need to put in some effort and have food ready? And which of those foods do I feel comfortable making in bigger batches so I'm just reheating or repurposing? And when we're working on healing your relationship with food, but also being realistic with ourselves, there are products that are designed to make it easier for us to eat. And we can always find ways to add nutrition to those things. A lot of people compare themselves to their mothers too. Like growing up, my mom did everything from scratch. It's like, great, I'm glad that she did that for you. But right now, you just need some help. And these things are here to help you.
I don't know why there is so much weird embarrassment about not doing everything the fanciest way. But it's also funny because I feel like there's a level of performance that goes on for me with cooking and stuff. Like if Eric is home, we're gonna have a full meal. Like I gotta make a whole thing. He's not home, I'm like a gremlin eating. Like it's not a meal, you know? So I also wonder why there is like this level of care and providing that I'm willing to put up for other people, like my friends, my husband, whoever, but not for myself. How do I get to a point where I want to take care of me and prioritize that part of my relationship with food?
Yeah, that's a totally valid point. And it's also helps highlight like what values you do have about food and where do you fit into those values. And if you're not fitting in there, like there's an opportunity to reassess those so that you do fit. I do the same thing though. When Keith's away, I will forget to eat. Yeah. Or I will be like, oh my God, I'm hungry. Let me eat yogurt. We have to be intentional on how we kind of think of ourselves and our future selves and making meals for that person, whether we like it or not. It's okay to like lean into the things that make your life easier and just find ways to add nutrition to those things.
As a chef, Kiki Canuto does a lot of prep, both for herself and her clients. But one of the hardest parts of working in food is seeing how much of it gets wasted. So for our final story, Chef Kiki is sharing some tips and tricks for getting the most out of your meal prep and keeping scraps out of the landfill.
As I've been cooking over the years, I've thought more and more about my food footprint. From working in restaurants to private homes, seeing the amount of food that goes to waste really stresses me out. The highly requested yet untouched charcuterie boards at dinner parties make me cringe. According to Commons, the handy sustainable lifestyle app, a quarter of the world's food waste happens in the kitchen. When I learned this, I started to really question my food offerings and what I could do to change them. And there was no better place for me to start than at one of my favorites, the farmers markets. We're going to the Atwater Village Farmers Market. I could eat everything right now. Oh, and Dave's spicy tempeh, that is good. One of the main reasons I like to shop at farmers markets for clients is because I feel like people want to eat food when it's like fresh and they get to see it in its peak stage. And having conversations with farmers also just makes it really more enjoyable than shopping at a normal grocery store. The best part of market shopping is letting the market tell me what I'm making that week. If something looks delicious, I'm buying it. It's that simple. It helps keep my food waste under control too. Sometimes having a whole week's worth of meals prepped leaves room for food waste. So I tend to shop more frequently throughout the week because food really is just a mood for me. I'll just ask myself, what mood am I in? What do I feel for? And just go from there. For today's meal prep, I am making some tacos. So I had some leftover steak in my freezer, so I took that out before I headed out to the market. And then I got some fresh veggies, so like herbs, like cilantro, some onions. I find that they're always like really beautiful at the market, so I got those. And then I got some really lovely corn tortillas. I'll kind of just like batch out a bunch of meat, get it all marinated, cook it off, chop it up, and then I'll have it stored in my fridge for the week. I'm just washing some of my fresh cilantro that I got from Sunrise Organic Farm. It's really beautiful, super leafy. I'm going to be chopping up some of this for my tacos along with the onions that I got from them. I definitely want to use a lot of the stems. I like to avoid food waste as much as possible, so if there's a way to use every part of the vegetable, I definitely will, or I'll find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. For all of the onion skins, instead of throwing them out, I'm just gonna go ahead and toss them in my mill, which is a kitchen bin that you can use for all of your food scraps, food bones, you know, any eggshells, basically any kitchen scraps that you would have after you're done cooking. You can toss in there, and then it turns all of the scraps into chicken feed. So it's actually a really cool little tool that I love having, and I definitely recommend it to my clients and friends. So if you're into saving the planet one small step at a time, I definitely look into a mill. I really like to try to manage my food waste as much as possible because it really makes me feel a lot better, knowing that I work in an industry that produces a lot of food waste on all different levels, at the private level, in restaurants. I'm trying to do my little part at home.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. Learn more about the topics we touched on this week by checking out our show notes. This episode of Meat and Three was reported by Taylor Graham, Hugh Quinn, Jesse Nicely, and Kiki Canuto. Our lead producers on this episode were Taylor Graham and me, H. Conley. Taylor Early and I are the executive producers of Meat and Three. Our audio engineer is Sam Girardi. Our theme song was composed by Breakmaster Cylinder. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Meat and Three is powered by Simplecast. Meat and Three is a production of Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org and follow us at heritage_radio and at meaty.gram. And please stay in touch. Whether you have a story idea or just like to say hey, write us at ideas@meatand3.nyc. That's all spelled out.
I'm admitting here and now I have a crush on another podcaster. It's called The Sporkful, and it's hosted by Dan Pashman, who's also the inventor of the pasta shape cascatelli. Why do I love Dan so much? What is this crush about? He obsesses about food to learn more about people. Dan explores what's so special about a shallot. Should you eat fast food on vacation? Is halal pork impossible? This is a podcast that's not just for foodies. It's actually for eaters. Listen to The Sporkful wherever you get your podcasts. I know you'll be full and satisfied.